I built my restaurant from nothing. Years of sweat and sacrifice went into harvest table my dream come true. When my brother Jackson asked to become co-owner without investing a dime, I offered him a job instead. His eyes changed that day, darkening with something I had never seen before. I still hear his words echoing in my nightmares. If I cannot have it, you will not either. I never thought blood could betray blood so completely. Before I continue this story of family betrayal, drop a like, hit subscribe, and let me know where you are watching from. Trust me, you will want to hear how I rose from the ashes of what came next. Growing up, Jackson and I were inseparable despite our 5-year age gap. He was my protector, my confidant, my best friend. We shared a bedroom in our modest home in Michigan, staying up late telling stories and making plans for businesses we would build together someday. Our grandmother sparked my passion for cooking during Sunday family dinners. While Jackson played video games, I stood on a step stool beside her, learning how to make her famous pot roast and apple pie. By high school, our paths began to diverge. I worked weekends at a local diner, saving every dollar for culinary school. Jackson bounced between jobs, never staying anywhere longer than a few months. He was smart and charismatic, but lacked patience for building something slowly. I put myself through culinary school, working 3 jobs. My routine was brutal classes during the day, waiting tables at night and washing dishes at another restaurant until 2 in the morning. I slept 4 hours before starting again. Jackson would sometimes visit, impressed by the techniques I was learning, but dismissing the idea of formal education. Money spent on school was money wasted, he insisted. After graduation, I worked under 5 different chefs, absorbing everything I could about restaurant operations. I lived in a tiny studio apartment, banking 70% of my income toward my dream. Jackson moved to California, then Texas, then back to Michigan, trying his hand at sales, real estate, and even cryptocurrency trading. Each venture started with enthusiasm but ended in frustration. It took 10 years to save enough for a down payment on a small space in a gentrifying neighborhood. The building needed substantial work, but I saw potential where others saw problems. I maxed out credit cards, took loans, and worked 18-hour days to transform it into harvest table. The concept was simple, seasonal American comfort food with modern techniques. We had 10 tables and a small bar, nothing fancy, but every detail was intentional. Opening night terrified me. Would anyone come? Would they like the food? Jackson showed up unexpectedly, slapping me on the back and declaring he always knew I would make it. His support meant everything that night. The first year nearly broke me. Equipment failures, staff turnover, and supplier issues ate into already thin margins. I did not take a salary, sleeping on a cot in the office to save rent money. Slowly, word spread. Local food critics gave positive reviews. Regulars began to form. By year 2, we had lines on weekends and a growing reputation. Jackson visited occasionally, always complimenting the food and atmosphere. I noticed how his eyes tracked the busy dining room, mentally calculating the revenue. He would ask casual questions about profits and costs. I shared some details, proud of our growing success, never suspecting his interest was more than brotherly curiosity. Harvest Table celebrated its 3rd anniversary with a special menu showcasing our journey. We had expanded to the space next door, doubling our capacity. I had 15 employees who felt like family and financial stability for the first time in my adult life. The restaurant was not just surviving, it was thriving. My dream had become reality through persistence and hard work. I should have seen the warning signs in Jackson's increasingly frequent visits. The way he positioned himself at the bar, watching operations like he was studying a business model. How he questioned my executive chef about recipes as if documenting intellectual property. The pointed comments about family supporting family. But I was blind to it, all happy to have my brother in my life, and seemingly interested in what I had built. It was a Tuesday night, typically slower in the restaurant business, but we had a private party that kept us busy until 10. I was reviewing inventory in my office when Jackson walked in, unannounced. He looked good in an expensive suit I knew he could not afford on his car salesman's salary. I hugged him, genuinely happy to see him. We had not connected properly in weeks. I offered him a seat at the bar while I finished closing procedures with my staff. He nursed a bourbon, chatting with my bartender, Jennifer, while I counted the register and sent everyone home. When we were alone, I grabbed a bottle of the good whiskey I kept for special occasions and 2 glasses. We moved to a corner table where I had shared meals with countless guests, but never with my own brother. I cooked us a simple late dinner, nothing fancy, just steak and potatoes the way our grandmother used to make. The conversation flowed easily at first. Jackson told stories about difficult customers at the dealership. I shared the challenges of managing rising food costs. It felt like old times, two brothers breaking bread, no complications. Halfway through his second whiskey, Jackson's tone changed. He put his fork down and leaned forward. I remember the exact words that changed everything between us. I have been thinking, Lyle. You have built something amazing here, but you work too hard. You need a partner, someone to lighten the load. Someone you can trust completely. I nodded, thinking he was suggesting I hire a general manager. What I am saying is I want to come on as co-owner of Harvest Table. The statement hung in the air. I waited for him to laugh to indicate it was a joke. His expression remained serious, expectant even. Co-owner, I finally asked. You want to buy in? Well, not exactly buy in. I do not have that kind of capital right now, but I could run the front of house deal with customers, handle the business side while you focus on the kitchen. Equal partners, equal profit share. I put my glass down carefully. My mind raced through the implications. Jackson had never worked in restaurants. He knew nothing about food costs, labor management, or the thousand details that kept a restaurant afloat. More importantly, Harvest Table represented every dollar I had saved, every sacrifice I had made for a decade. Jackson must have sensed my hesitation. He leaned forward, voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Look, between brothers, I am in a tough spot. The dealership is cutting commissions, and I have some debts that are piling up. I need something stable, something with real potential. This place is gold, and who better to partner with than family? The truth emerged. This was not about helping me. It was about helping himself. I felt a flash of disappointment, but pushed it aside. He was still my brother. I appreciate you thinking of me, Jackson, but partnership is not the right move. Harvest Table operates on thin margins. Taking another full owner would cripple our finances. His face hardened slightly. What about family taking care of family? I thought that meant something to you. It does, I replied carefully. That is why I am offering you a job instead. You can start as a server, learn the business from the ground up. If it works out, we can discuss a management position with performance bonuses. I thought it was a generous offer, a chance for him to earn his way in legitimately. Jackson stared at me for a long moment, before his expression relaxed into a smile that did not quite reach his eyes. Okay, little brother, I get it. You built this place. You call the shots. A job sounds good for now. When do I start? Relief washed over me. The tension dissipated as we finished our meal and reminisced about childhood memories. When we parted that night with a hug, I believed the awkward moment had passed. I had navigated a potential conflict while still helping my brother. Jackson started the following Monday. I gave him the same training as any new server menu knowledge, point of sale system operations service standards. He picked things up quickly, his natural charm making him popular with customers. For 2 weeks, everything seemed perfect. I even began to imagine a future where he could take on more responsibility, perhaps eventually earning a stake through sweat equity. Then the problems started, small at first. He took extended breaks during busy shifts. He argued with the kitchen staff about ticket times. He bent rules for customers he liked and was curt with those he did not. When confronted, he would remind me that he was not just another employee but my brother. The situation deteriorated over the following month. Jackson began arriving late, claiming privileges other staff did not have. When our head server, Angela, corrected his table service technique, he snapped at her in front of customers. I had to pull him aside after the shift. This is a business, Jackson. Everyone follows the same standards, family or not. He rolled his eyes. These serving rules are beneath me. I should be managing this place, not taking orders from college kids. You need to earn that position like everyone else, I insisted. Each day, his attitude grew worse. He began telling customers he was the co-owner, creating confusion among regulars who knew me as the sole proprietor. When I confronted him, he shrugged it off as a misunderstanding. But I heard him do it again the very next day. The staff began coming to me with concerns. Jackson was skipping side work, leaving others to pick up his slack. He made inappropriate comments to female servers. He changed his orders after submitting them to the kitchen, causing delays during peak service times. I scheduled us for an early morning meeting before the restaurant opened. I laid out the issues clearly, offering him one more chance to adjust his behavior. Jackson listened with arms crossed, jaw tight. "This is ridiculous," he finally said. "You have me bussing tables when I should be helping run this gold mine. I have business experience you do not have, Lyle. You are a cook, not a businessman. With me handling operations, we could expand to multiple locations. You have been here 6 weeks," I said, keeping my voice level. "You have not earned the right to make those decisions." Jackson stood suddenly, his chair scraping loudly across the floor. "We are family. I watched you learn to ride a bike. I protected you from neighborhood bullies. I deserve a piece of what you have built." The raw entitlement in his voice shocked me. This was not the brother I thought I knew. "I built this from nothing," I replied. 10 years of 60-hour weeks, maxed out credit cards, no vacations, no new clothes, nothing but work. Where were you then? Where was your investment? His face flushed, dark red. "That is low, Lyle. Real low. I am offering you a path here, Jackson. Learn the business properly. Prove yourself and opportunities will open up. But I cannot and will not just hand over half of everything I have built." "Fine." His voice had gone dangerously quiet. "If that is how you want to play it." I did not fire him that day, hoping he would reflect and return with a better attitude. That was my mistake. 2 nights later, during our busiest Saturday service in months, Jackson showed up drunk. He spilled drinks on customers, entered incorrect orders, and argued loudly with our bartender. When I pulled him off the floor, he shoved me against the wall in full view of the dining room. "You think you are so special with your fancy restaurant," he slurred. "Half of this should be mine anyway. We are brothers." I had no choice. I told him he was fired and needed to leave immediately. His face contorted with rage. "If I cannot have it, you will not either," he shouted as I escorted him to the door. The next day, I changed the security codes and informed the staff that Jackson no longer worked at Harvest Table. Most were relieved, having witnessed his decline. I was heartbroken but determined to protect what I had built. Over the following week, strange things began happening. Reservations were mysteriously canceled. Our Google reviews received a flood of 1-star ratings with similar wording. A delivery of expensive imported truffles went missing from our back door. I installed security cameras but did not file a police report. Despite everything, I could not bring myself to officially accuse my own brother. My chef suggested we take the threats seriously. I should have listened. 9 days after firing Jackson at 3:15 in the morning, my phone jolted me awake. The caller ID showed the local police department. My stomach dropped before I even answered. "Mr. Bennett, this is Officer Torres. I am afraid there has been a fire at your restaurant." I drove through empty streets in a daze, praying it was just a small kitchen fire, something repairable. The flashing lights of fire trucks and police cars were visible from blocks away. As I parked across the street, the full devastation came into view. Flames still licked through the windows of what had been my dream. Firefighters worked to contain the blaze, but I could already tell the damage was catastrophic. A police officer approached, asking if I was the owner. Through the shock, I nodded. "Do you know anyone who might want to harm your business?" he asked. I almost said no automatically. Then I remembered Jackson's threat. "My brother," I whispered. "He threatened the restaurant last week." The officer's expression changed. He led me to a police car where another officer was reviewing security footage on a laptop. The exterior camera I had installed captured clear images of Jackson breaking the back window at 2:27 in the morning. The footage showed him entering with a gas can. He reappeared outside 4 minutes later, watching briefly as the first flames became visible before walking calmly to his car. My legs gave out. I sat on the curb watching as firefighters finally extinguished the last flames, revealing a charred shell where my life's work had stood hours before. The smell of smoke and ash filled my lungs as I struggled to comprehend the reality before me. The next few days passed in a nightmarish blur. Insurance investigators asked pointed questions about my relationship with Jackson. Because the arson was committed by a family member, there were complications with the claim. The adjuster explained that policies typically excluded coverage for damage caused intentionally by relatives of the policyholder. My staff was suddenly unemployed. I called an emergency meeting at my apartment, breaking down, as I told them I could not pay them beyond their last week. Many hugged me, some cried with me. These people had become my family, and now I was letting them down. The police arrested Jackson at his apartment that same day. They found the gas can in his car and gasoline residue on his shoes. When confronted with the evidence, he admitted to setting the fire without showing a trace of remorse. The family fallout was immediate and devastating. Our parents in their 70s were torn between sons. Our mother could not believe Jackson would do such a thing, suggesting I must have provoked him somehow. Our father sat silently, aged a decade overnight by the news. Extended family took sides, holiday gatherings now permanently fractured. I visited Jackson once in county jail before his arraignment. I needed to understand why. He sat across from me, separated by glass, looking smaller than I remembered. "Why, Jackson?" I asked, voice breaking. "Why destroy everything you gave me no choice?" He replied coldly. "You humiliated me, treated me like any other employee when I am your blood. If you had just made me partner, none of this would have happened." No hint of remorse colored his words. In that moment, I realized the brother I thought I knew had never existed. This person had watched me build something through years of sacrifice, only to burn it down in minutes when he could not possess it. I initially resisted pressing charges. Despite everything, the thought of sending my brother to prison was unbearable. The district attorney explained that the case would proceed with or without my cooperation. The evidence was overwhelming. When Jackson rejected a plea deal insisting he had done nothing wrong, my decision became clear. I would testify. Depression enveloped me in the weeks that followed. I barely left my apartment, ignoring calls from friends and former employees. My savings were depleted, my credit cards maxed out again, this time with nothing to show for it. I questioned every decision that had led to this point. Should I have just given him what he wanted? Was a restaurant worth destroying a family? Rock bottom came exactly 1 month after the fire. I sat on my apartment floor, surrounded by unpaid bills, when my phone rang. It was Angela, my former head server. "We miss you, chef. Are you doing okay?" Her simple concern broke something open in me. I sobbed for the first time since the night of the fire, releasing weeks of bottled grief and rage. When I finally calmed down, she told me about a former employee who now managed a food hall downtown. They have a stall opening up. Nothing fancy, just a counter and a small kitchen. "Tom thought you might be interested." I almost declined automatically. The thought of starting over was overwhelming. But something flickered inside me, a tiny spark of the passion that had driven me for years. The next day I visited the food hall. The available space was a tenth the size of Harvest Table, with barely room for 2 cooks. But it had the essentials: a flat top fryer and prep space. The rent was manageable, the lease month to month. No long-term commitment if it did not work out. The timing aligned with Jackson's trial. Testifying against my brother was the hardest thing I had ever done. I described our relationship, his request for co-ownership, the escalating behavior, and finally his threat. The prosecution played the security footage. Jackson watched impassively as his attorney tried to paint him as a victim of mental health issues and substance abuse. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours before finding him guilty of arson and property destruction. The judge sentenced him to 7 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 4+ restitution. I knew he would never be able to pay. Walking out of the courtroom, I felt no satisfaction, only a strange lightness. The decision to rebuild was no longer about Jackson or what I had lost, but about what I could still create. With the last of my savings and a small loan from my parents, who finally recognized the truth, I opened Phoenix Counter at the food hall. The menu was simplified comfort food dishes I could execute consistently with minimal staff. I hired 2 former Harvest Table employees who had stood by me through everything. The grand opening was nothing like I had imagined. Instead of a champagne toast in an elegant dining room, we served our first customers from paper boats in a communal eating area. But the food was good, honest, and made with care. Local media picked up the story. A reporter interviewed me about losing my restaurant to arson, committed by my own brother. I spoke candidly about the devastation but focused on the rebuilding. The article went viral, drawing attention from across the city. A former regular started a crowdfunding campaign without telling me. The goal was $20,000 to help me secure a new restaurant space. It reached 50,000 in 3 days with contributions from strangers who had never tasted my food but were moved by the story of betrayal and resilience. With this unexpected windfall, I found a small restaurant space in an emerging neighborhood. It needed work but had good bones and character. Former staff volunteered weekends to help with painting and renovation. Suppliers I had worked with for years offered extended terms to help me get started. 6 months after losing everything, I opened Phoenix Table. The name acknowledged what had happened while refusing to be defined by it. The menu featured refined versions of the comfort food that had sustained me through the darkest times. We had 30 seats, a small but efficient kitchen, and a team comprised entirely of former Harvest Table staff who believed in me enough to return. Opening night saw a line around the block. We served 90 covers in a space designed for 60, the kitchen pushing its limits, but never compromising quality. As I watched the dining room filled with both familiar and new faces, I realized I had created something even more precious than before. 2 years have passed since that opening night. Phoenix Table earned a Michelin Bib Gourmand designation last year, recognition of exceptional food at moderate prices. We expanded to the building next door, adding a private dining space and cocktail bar. The most significant change was in our business model. Instead of seeking traditional investors or partners, I implemented profit sharing for employees who stay more than a year. My core team now has a genuine stake in our success, without the complications of ownership that had triggered the disaster with Jackson. Last month, I received a letter from Jackson, his first communication since sentencing. The handwriting was familiar but neater than I remembered, filling 3 pages with what appeared to be genuine reflection. He wrote about prison, giving him time to confront his entitlement and jealousy. He apologized for destroying what I had built, and acknowledged that no explanation could justify his actions. I read the letter several times before putting it away without responding. Perhaps someday I will find the words, but for now the wound remains too deep for easy forgiveness. The journey forced me to re-examine my understanding of ownership and success. What I lost was not just a physical restaurant, but the illusion that I could protect relationships by giving people what they want. Sometimes saying no is the most honest expression of respect, even when it costs you dearly. True ownership, I have learned, extends beyond legal papers and profit margins. It encompasses the community you build, the values you uphold, and the resilience you demonstrate when everything burns to the ground. I established a small grant program for aspiring restaurant owners, particularly those rebuilding after setbacks. The application asks not about business plans or profit projections, but about purpose and community impact. Success grows from service, not entitlement. Yesterday, as I stood in Phoenix Table watching the dinner service unfold smoothly around me, I felt a profound sense of peace. The restaurant was full, the kitchen humming with focused energy servers moving confidently between tables. What we built from the ashes is stronger than what was lost, tempered by fire, into something more authentic and sustainable. Some relationships, like some structures, cannot be rebuilt exactly as they were. Jackson and I may never regain what we once had, and that acceptance has been its own form of freedom. I no longer carry the weight of trying to maintain a connection that brought destruction. The most valuable lesson came unexpectedly. People show their true character not when you give them everything, but when you set healthy boundaries. Some will respect those limits and remain in your life. Others will try to burn everything down rather than accept your right to say no. I choose now to focus on those who celebrated my rise from the ashes rather than those who lit the match. That decision has made all the difference. What would you do if someone threatened to destroy what you built? Have you ever had to rebuild after a betrayal? Leave your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe to support more content about overcoming life's toughest challenges. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, sometimes what rises from the ashes is stronger than what burned.